I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually sit with the answer rather than just moving past it. When was the last time you rested? Not slept, rested. Not crashed from exhaustion and called it a break. Genuinely, fully, guiltlessly rested. Did nothing. Needed nothing from yourself. We're not productive. We're not useful. We're not preparing for the next thing. Take a second. When was it? For some of us, that question is easy. For a lot of the women I know, a lot of the women I think are listening to this, that question is genuinely hard to answer. Because rest, in the way I just described it, has never really been available. Not really, not without cost. There was always something else that needed doing, someone who needed tending, something that needed holding together. And even on the days when nothing was actually on fire, the anxiety of potential fire kept us in a low hum of readiness. Just in case. Always just in case. Which makes me think of a time when I was in my last year of college and steady juggling 3 different jobs. And I remember going to one of my jobs and having a conversation with a colleague about how the week was going and being told, "You're working as if you have 6 children at home to feed." And I laughed about it then and just thought, yes, look at me, the strong, determined, hardworking woman. Only to find out years later, I didn't know that was survival mode. I thought it was just me. I thought it was just how I was built. High strung, driven, a little anxious, always on. I thought the women in my family were just strong. I thought hustle was a virtue. I thought rest had to be earned. It took me a long time to understand. I hadn't chosen any of that. It had been handed to me. And the women who handed it to me had it handed to them. All the way back. Welcome to Unapologetically Us. I'm Neeka, and today we're talking about survival mode. What it is, where it came from, what it cost, and the soft life. What it actually means. Why it's so much harder than it looks. And why choosing it is one of the most radical things a Caribbean woman can do. Let's go. Survival mode is not a personality. I want to say that first, because I spent years thinking it was mine. Survival mode is a nervous system response. It's what happens when your system, from a very early age, learns that the world is unpredictable, that the resources are scarce, that you need to be ready, that you cannot fully relax because something might need you at any moment. And it is adaptive. It is smart. In the environment it was built for, it kept you safe. The problem is that the nervous system doesn't automatically update when the environment changes. You can move out of the house, move out of the country, build the career, create the stability, and still be running the same program. Still scanning for threat. Still unable to sit in ease without the low hum of waiting for things to go wrong. For Caribbean women specifically, survival mode has layers. There's the personal layer, your own childhood, your own family, whatever you navigated growing up. But underneath that, there's a cultural layer, a generational layer. And underneath that, if we're being honest, there's a historical layer that goes all the way back to colonialism, to enslavement, to the particular violence of a system that required Black bodies to produce without rest, without reprieve, without the right to simply be. That is not ancient history. That is the bodies of our grandmothers. It is in the way that they moved through the world. And it was passed to our mothers. And it was passed to us. Not always in words, in posture, in habit, in what was praised and what was scorned. The woman who rested was lazy. The woman who asked for help was weak. The woman who said, I can't, was failing her family, failing her community, failing some unspoken standard of a Black Caribbean womanhood that required her to be inexhaustible. So we learned to be inexhaustible. We learned to suppress the exhaustion. We learned to smile through it, push through it, pray through it, run through it. And we called it strength. We called it resilience. We called it what Caribbean women do. But I want to ask, what if it wasn't strength? What if it was just the only option available? What if resilience, for a lot of us, was just suffering with good posture? I want to talk about the woman we grew up watching, because I think this is where it lives. Not in abstract history, but in specific women. Women with faces and names and particular ways of carrying themselves. For me, it was the women in my family. Women who were up before the sun, who cooked and cleaned and worked and managed and held and organized and worried and prayed and did all of it without complaint, without acknowledgement, without anyone asking if they were okay. Because you didn't ask. Because she was fine. Because she was always fine. I watched those women and I filed it away. This is what a good woman looks like. This is what love looks like. Poured out, given away, run until empty. This is what strength looks like. Upright, uncomplaining, still going. And I loved those women. I still love them completely. That love is not complicated. But here's what I've had to sit with. Those women were not choosing to live that way. They were surviving in systems, economic systems, family systems, cultural systems that did not give them the option to choose differently. Their sacrifice was real. Their strength was real. But the condition that required that sacrifice and that strength were not just, were not fair, were not what any of them would have chosen if choosing had been freely available. And the most painful part, the part that took me the longest to name, is that some of them never got to rest. Not once. Not at the end. Not even at the very end. That is a grief. And I think a lot of us are carrying that grief without knowing it. The grief of watching the women we love give everything and receive so little. The grief of knowing they deserve more. The guilt. And this is the complicated part. The guilt of wanting something different for ourselves when they didn't get it. Like choosing rest is a betrayal of their sacrifice. Like living softly is an insult to how hard they had to live. It isn't. It isn't betrayal. It is, if anything, the completion of something they started. They survived so you could thrive. That was the whole point. Choosing ease is not spitting on their struggle. It is the struggle arriving somewhere worth arriving. I need to talk about what the soft life actually is, because I think it's been misunderstood. I think people see the aesthetic, the silk robes and the spa days and the not working too hard, and they think that's the thing. And look, I'm not against silk robes. I support silk robes fully. But the soft life, as I understand it, as I'm choosing it, is not primarily about aesthetic. It's about orientation. It's about what you have decided your nervous system is allowed to feel. The soft life is the decision that ease is allowed, that you do not have to earn rest, that pleasure does not need to be justified, that you are allowed to receive care, help, abundance, love, without immediately either deflecting it or repaying it before you've even finished receiving it. That last one, let me sit there for a second. Because I think a lot of us, women who were raised to give, to provide, to be useful, receiving is genuinely one of the hardest things. Someone does something kind, and the reflex is immediate, minimize it, deflect it, return it as fast as possible. Someone offers help, and the reflex is, I'm fine, I've got it, don't worry about me. Because receiving feels like owing. Receiving feels like weakness. Receiving feels like admitting you couldn't do it alone. And you were taught that doing it alone was a measure of your worth. The soft life asks you to unlearn that, to practice slowly, uncomfortably, the radical act of letting something good just land, of saying thank you and meaning it without the footnote, of letting someone carry something that you could carry alone but don't have to. And I want to name something else about the soft life that I think gets missed. It's not anti-ambition. It is not unbothered to the point of not caring. You can want things deeply, work toward them seriously, and still refuse to grind yourself into nothing to get there. You can have standards and drive and a whole vision for your life and also take the afternoon off. Those things are not opposition. The grind culture that told you they were was lying. Softness is not the absence of fire. It is fire that has learned it doesn't have to burn itself to stay warm. Here's what I will tell you honestly, still in survival mode some days. Not as often, not as fully, but it comes back, particularly when things feel uncertain. Financially, professionally, relationally, the old programming boots up, and suddenly I'm back at doing too much, sleeping too little, monitoring everything, preparing for a disaster that hasn't arrived and may never arrive. I'm still learning to recognize it when it's happening rather than 3 weeks after. Still learning that the anxiety spike is not always a signal that something is wrong. Sometimes it's just the nervous system running old code. Still learning to ask, is this a real threat or is this the program? I am still working on receiving. Still catch myself deflecting compliments, minimizing help, preemptively repaying kindness before I've had the chance to even feel it. It is a deep groove. It does not undo quickly, and I still feel the guilt sometimes. On a slow Sunday rising, when I'm doing nothing of use to anyone, and the sun is coming through the window, and it is genuinely, simply beautiful, I still sometimes feel the flicker of it. The voice that says you should be doing something. The pull back toward motion. What I've learned to do with that voice is not fight it. Just notice it. Say, There you are. I know where you came from. I am deserving. And then stay in the soft rising anyway. That is the practice. That is all it is. Not fixing, not arrival, just noticing and choosing differently. One Sunday rising at a time. Here's your invitation this week. And I want to be specific because I know that the practice rest is too vague to actually do anything with. I want you to do one soft thing this week. One thing that is purely for your pleasure or your rest, with no productivity attached to it. Not a self-care task. Not a rest that is strategic so you can work better tomorrow. Just a thing you enjoy. A thing that feels good. A thing that costs nothing except the willingness to receive it. A slow bath with no phone. A meal you cook just because you love the smell of it, with no one else to feed. A rising where you stay in bed 20 minutes past when you need to get up, and you let it be exactly that, 20 minutes of softness, given freely to yourself. And when the guilt comes, and it might, don't fight it, just name it. Say, this is the survival mode talking. This is the old program. And then stay in the bath anyway. The women who came before you survived so you could do more than survive. Let yourself do more than survive. For even 20 minutes. Even this week. Start there. That's episode 3 of Unapologetically Us. If this episode touched something in you, share it with the woman who needs permission to rest. She is out there. She is probably someone you love. She might be running so hard she doesn't even know she's tired anymore. Send this to her. Come find me at Unapologetically Us. Real talk, no apologies, on Spotify. And you can find my other socials in the description. Tell me what came up. Tell me about the guilt. Tell me about the Sunday rising. I want to hear all of it. Next week, we're going somewhere that a lot of you've been asking for. What being the strong one costs me. Because there's a particular price that gets paid by the woman who holds everything together. And most of us have been paying it for years without anyone naming it. That conversation is coming, and it's going to be a lot. Until then, choose soft wherever you can. In how you speak to yourself, in how you move through your day, in what you decide you don't have to earn before you're allowed to have it. You're allowed to be soft. You always were. I'm Neeka, and this is Unapologetically Us. I'll see you next week.